My husband had been dead 9 months when my mother said, maybe comfort comes from unexpected places. Then I realized she was talking about my stepbrother. I moved back into my mother's house in Salem 9 months after Luke died. I knew it was probably a mistake the second I carried my suitcase through the front door, but grief makes you accept things you would have rejected when you were whole. My old apartment was too expensive to keep alone. That was the practical reason. The real reason was harder to say out loud. Every corner of that place still had Luke in it. His mug in the cabinet. His shoes by the door. His jacket still hanging behind the bedroom door because I could not make myself move it. I kept telling myself I would pack his things slowly, respectfully, when I was ready. But ready never came. I stopped sleeping in our bedroom because his side of the bed looked too neat. I started falling asleep on the couch with the TV on, waking up at 3 in the morning with my neck hurting and my chest feeling hollow. People kept telling me, "You're so strong," and I hated it because I did not feel strong. I felt like someone had scooped out the center of me and expected the outside to keep walking around like nothing had changed. So when my mother said, "Come home for a while, Kate. You shouldn't be alone," I said yes. I wanted a mother. I wanted one place where I did not have to pretend I was handling anything well. I wanted someone to put a plate in front of me and not ask why I was crying over laundry detergent. I wanted to be somebody's daughter for a while instead of somebody's widow. Linda hugged me at the door and held on too long. She said, "You're safe here. You can breathe here." I wanted to believe her so badly that I ignored the knot in my chest. Paul, my stepfather, carried my bags upstairs. He was quiet and awkward in the way people get when they do not know what to do with grief. He said, "We're glad you're here," then cleared his throat and looked away like even that was too much emotion for him. Ryan was in the kitchen when I came in. My stepbrother. I had known Ryan for years, but we had never been close. He was Paul's son, and he lived in the basement room because he was saving money, which had been the explanation for longer than anyone wanted to admit. He was polite at holidays. Funny sometimes. A little intense if you talked to him too long, but not in a way that ever scared me before. Just in the way some people look at you like they are hearing a conversation you are not part of. He came out of the kitchen wiping his hands on a dish towel and said, "Hey, Kate." His voice was careful, like he was trying not to break me. I said, "Hey." He asked if I needed help with anything. I said no. He said he made coffee if I wanted some. I said maybe later. That was it. Nothing strange. Nothing worth remembering. For the first few weeks, Ryan was just helpful. He left coffee outside my bedroom door in the morning. He took out the trash before I could. If I came home late, the porch light was always on. Once, when frost covered my windshield, he scraped it before I left. At first, I thought maybe he was just being kind because nobody knew how to act around me anymore. People either treated me like glass or like a problem they wanted solved quickly. Ryan's quiet helpfulness felt easier than all the sad looks and careful questions. My mother kept saying, "Ryan has always had a soft heart." I nodded because I did not have the energy to argue with harmless things. But then she started adding little comments that made me uncomfortable. "He notices when you don't eat. He understands loneliness better than people think. He's always cared about you." That last one stuck to me. I told myself she meant family care. Normal care. The kind of care you are supposed to have when someone grieving is living under the same roof. Then one night I came home and found Ryan making soup. The smell hit me before I even took off my coat. Chicken and rice with extra pepper and too much garlic. Luke used to make it when I was sick because he believed garlic fixed everything. A cold. A bad day. A fight. A terrible mood. He would stand over the stove, stirring like he was saving my life, and say, "Trust the garlic." I froze in the doorway. Ryan turned around and smiled like he had done something beautiful. He said, "Your mom told me Luke used to make this for you." I figured maybe it would help. I looked at the pot. Then at my mother, who was sitting at the table watching my reaction too closely. She said, "Isn't that sweet?" I wanted to scream. But how do you explain that kindness can feel like theft when it is wearing your dead husband's memories like a costume? So I said, "Thank you." I ate half a bowl and felt sick the whole time. Ryan watched me like he was waiting for the soup to unlock something in me. My mother kept smiling softly. Paul barely looked up from his plate. After dinner, I went upstairs, shut my door, and cried into a towel because I did not want anyone to hear me. That was when I started locking my bedroom door. Not because I thought Ryan would come in. Not yet. I just needed one space in that house that belonged only to me. The next uncomfortable moment happened on the back porch. I was wearing Luke's old hoodie. It was faded blue, stretched at the cuffs, and still smelled faintly like the cedar drawer where I kept it. I wore it too much. I knew that. I wore it on good days, bad days, days when I had no reason except that I missed the weight of something that had belonged to him. I was sitting outside with tea I had forgotten to drink when Ryan came out and sat beside me. He did not ask if he could sit. He just did. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he looked at the hoodie and said, "You wear that a lot." I pulled the sleeves over my hands. I said, "Yeah." He said, "It's okay to stop wearing his things someday." I stared at the fence. I'm not ready. He nodded like he understood better than I did. Then he said, I know. I just mean you're still young. You don't have to bury yourself with him. I stood up so fast the chair scraped against the porch. Ryan raised his hands a little and said, I didn't mean it like that. But he did. Maybe not exactly the way it sounded, but close enough. I went inside without answering. After that, I tried to avoid him. I stopped taking the coffee he left by my door. I ate dinner at different times. I waited until late at night to do laundry because the washer was near the basement stairs and I hated feeling like he might appear behind me. But avoiding Ryan made him more noticeable. If I went downstairs, he came upstairs. If I sat in the living room, he suddenly needed something from the same room. If I opened the fridge, he was beside me asking if I had eaten. If I left for work, he was outside near his car. One morning, I stepped onto the porch and he was standing there with 2 travel mugs. He said, I made yours the way you like it. I said, I'm actually stopping for coffee. His smile dropped for 1 second, then came back. Right. Of course. I felt guilty all the way to work, and that made me angry because I had done nothing wrong. That is the worst part of being around someone who makes you uncomfortable in a quiet way. They do not do one huge thing you can point to and say, see? That is why I feel unsafe. They give you 100 tiny reasons to feel trapped, and every single one sounds too small when you say it out loud. He made me coffee. He cooked soup. He asked where I was going. He looked at my dead husband's hoodie too long. People hear that and think you are ungrateful. Dramatic. Broken from grief. So I kept quiet longer than I should have. Then one Friday night, I came home later than usual because I had sat in my car outside a grocery store for almost an hour. I used to do that after Luke died. I would finish errands and then just sit there with the engine off, hands on the steering wheel, unable to make myself move. Every place felt like a place I did not want to be. When I walked into the house, Ryan was in the hallway. He said, where were you? Not, hey, how was your night? Where were you? Like I owed him an answer. I said, out. He frowned. With someone. I laughed because I thought he had to be joking. He did not laugh. I said, Ryan, I'm tired. He stepped slightly in front of me. Not enough to block me completely. Just enough that I had to stop. He said, I'm not trying to be creepy. Whenever someone says that, they usually already are. I said nothing. He said, I just worry about you. You're vulnerable right now. People can take advantage of that. I looked at him and said, I can take care of myself. I know you think that. Something in his tone made my skin prickle. I said, move. He blinked like I had hurt him. Then he stepped aside. I went upstairs and locked my door with shaking hands. The next morning, I told my mother. I did not tell her everything because I still felt ridiculous. I said Ryan was making me uncomfortable. I said he was too involved in my schedule. I said he made comments about Luke that I did not like. My mother sighed. Not a concerned sigh. A tired one. She said, honey, he is awkward. He doesn't always know how to talk about feelings. I said, he asked where I was like I owed him an answer. Maybe he was worried. He keeps following me around the house. He lives here too. I know he lives here. That is not what I mean. She looked at me then, and I saw something in her face that made my stomach drop. Not disbelief exactly. More like annoyance that I was refusing to understand something she had already accepted. She said, Kate, you are not the only person grieving. I stared at her. Ryan barely knew Luke. I didn't mean Luke. My mouth went dry. She looked down at her coffee and said, people grieve what they never got to. I remember the clock ticking behind her. I remember Paul walking through the kitchen, hearing enough to know he should leave, and doing exactly that. I remember thinking, please do not say what I think you are saying. I asked, what does that mean? My mother pressed her lips together. Then she said, maybe comfort comes from unexpected places. And I knew. I knew before she said another word. I said, Mom. She said, I'm not saying anything should happen. Yes, you are. No, I'm saying maybe you shouldn't push away people who care about you. I said, are you talking about Ryan? She did not answer fast enough. That silence was worse than yes. I stood up from the table. She said, he has always had feelings, Kate. He disrespected your marriage. I felt like the floor tilted. Luke had been dead 9 months. I still woke up reaching for him. I still bought his favorite cereal by accident and cried in the aisle. I still had days where I forgot for half a second and thought, I need to tell Luke that, before reality hit so hard I could not breathe. And my mother was talking about Ryan's feelings like Luke had been an expired lease. I said, that is disgusting. Her face changed immediately. She got that wounded look she always got when she was caught saying something cruel and wanted to become the victim first. She said, I am trying to help you. By setting me up with my stepbrother? She whispered, don't make it sound dirty. It is dirty. He's not your blood. I stepped back like she had shoved me. Do you hear yourself? She started crying. She said, you are twisting my words because you miss Luke. I said, do not use him to excuse this. She cried harder, and for 1 second I felt that familiar daughter guilt. The old instinct to comfort my mother even when she was the one who hurt me. Then I pictured Ryan standing in the hallway asking where I had been, and the guilt turned into anger. I went upstairs. For 2 days, the house changed. Ryan stopped leaving coffee by my door. He stopped trying to talk to me. My mother moved around me like I was something sharp. Paul avoided everyone. Meals became silent and stiff. Part of me was relieved. I thought maybe I had finally made the boundary clear enough. Then Mia sent me the screenshot. Mia was Luke's cousin, but after he died, she became one of the few people who checked on me without making me feel like a burden. She did not tell me to be strong. She did not say Luke would want me to move on. She just sent messages like, "Did you eat? And want me to come over and sit in silence?" That night, she texted, "Please don't panic. But have you seen this?" The screenshot was from Ryan's private story. It was a picture of the soup. The soup. The one he made using Luke's memory like bait. Under it, he had written, "Some people don't know how to accept love even when it's been waiting for them for years." I stared at the words until they blurred. Then another screenshot came in. This one had no picture. Just white text on a black background. Being patient with someone's grief is hard when they keep choosing a ghost over the living. A ghost. He called Luke a ghost. Not my husband. Not a person. Not the man who held my hand through every hard day until his heart gave out without warning. A ghost. Like Luke was some shadow standing in Ryan's way. I sat on the edge of my bed and felt something in me go quiet. Not calm. Quiet like the second before glass breaks. I walked downstairs with my phone in my hand. Ryan was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter. My mother was at the table. Paul stood by the sink, pretending to rinse a mug that was already clean. I held up my phone. I said, "Take them down." Ryan looked at the screen, then at me. "What?" "Your posts. Take them down." My mother's face went pale. Ryan said, "I never named you." I laughed once. It came out ugly. "You didn't have to." He crossed his arms. "So now I'm not allowed to have feelings?" I said, "Not about me like that. Not publicly. Not while you're living in the same house as me. Not while talking about my dead husband like he was competition." His jaw tightened. My mother said, "Kate, lower your voice." I looked at her. "No." Ryan pushed away from the counter. "You act like I did something horrible. I've been patient. I've been kind. I've been here. I never asked you to be. That's the problem. You never ask for anything. You just sit there wearing his clothes and acting like your life ended." My chest hurt so badly I thought I might throw up. I said, "Part of it did." Ryan shook his head. "You don't have to keep choosing a ghost." The kitchen went silent. My mother made a sound like a sob. But not the kind of sob I expected. Not horror. Not disgust. Not anger on my behalf. It sounded almost romantic, like she was watching some tragic confession in a movie and thought the pain made it beautiful. That sound broke something in me. I turned to her. She had tears in her eyes, one hand pressed to her mouth. I said, "You are crying for him?" She whispered, "This is just so sad." "For who?" She did not answer. Ryan did. He said, "I loved you before Luke did. I just didn't get there first." For a second, I could not move. There are sentences that do not feel real when you hear them. They feel like something from a nightmare your brain made up because it hates you. I looked at Paul. He finally spoke. "Ryan, go downstairs." Ryan turned on him. "Dad." Paul said, louder, now. Ryan looked at me one last time, and there was no apology in his face. Only hurt pride. Like I had rejected him instead of begging for basic respect. Then he went down the basement stairs. My mother immediately stood up. "Kate, he didn't mean it that way." I stared at her. How else could he mean it? He is embarrassed. He is emotional. You know he doesn't always say things correctly. He called my husband a ghost. He is hurting too. I said, "Stop saying that." She reached for my arm, and I pulled away. That hurt her. I saw it. For half a second, I almost cared. Then she said, "I just wanted you to have someone." And I snapped. I had someone. He died. That doesn't mean there is a vacancy. Her face crumpled. Paul put the mug down carefully and said nothing. I went upstairs and packed. Not everything. Just what I could carry. Clothes. Chargers. Luke's hoodie. His wedding ring, which I wore on a chain. A small box of photos. My work bag. I moved fast because I knew if I slowed down, the house would start pulling at me again. My mother's crying. Paul's silence. Ryan downstairs. The old daughter guilt. My mother followed me into the hallway. "Kate, please don't leave like this." I said, "Move. You're making this worse." "No. You made it worse when you encouraged him." I did not encourage anything. I turned around so fast she stopped talking. You knew. You knew he had feelings. You knew he was making me uncomfortable. And instead of protecting me, you treated my grief like a dating window." She started crying again. "You are being cruel." I said, "No, Mom. I am being clear." That was the first time in my life I said something like that to her and did not apologize afterward. I called Mia from the driveway with my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. She answered on the second ring. I said, "Can I come to Portland tonight?" She did not ask questions. She just said, "Yes. Drive safe. I'll stay awake." I drove away from that house a little after midnight. My mother stood on the porch in her robe, crying like I was abandoning her. Paul stood behind her, one hand on the doorframe. Ryan never came outside. The drive to Portland felt longer than it was. I kept gripping the steering wheel too tightly. Every few miles, I thought I should pull over because I could not stop shaking. But then I pictured myself sleeping one more night in that room, listening for footsteps near the basement stairs, and I kept driving. When I got to Mia's apartment, she opened the door before I knocked. She did not hug me right away. She just looked at my face and said, "Do you want a hug or space?" That almost made me collapse. I said, "Hug." She held me in the hallway while I cried so hard I could barely breathe. For 3 weeks, I stayed on Mia's couch. It was not comfortable. Her apartment was small, and the heater made a clicking sound all night. But I slept better there than I had slept in my mother's house, because no one was watching me grieve like they were waiting for me to become available. During those 3 weeks, my phone became a war zone. My mother texted first. "Please come home. We need to talk." Then, "Ryan is sorry." Then, "You embarrassed him." Then, "I hope you know families don't recover from public humiliation." That last one confused me until Aunt Donna messaged me. She said, "Your mother is devastated. I don't know exactly what happened, but Ryan is clearly struggling, and you should not punish everyone because you are still grieving." I stared at that message for a long time, because that was what they had turned it into. Not Ryan crossing lines. Not my mother encouraging something twisted. Not my husband being disrespected. Just me being a grieving woman who could not control her emotions. Then Mia showed me Ryan's new post. He had deleted the old ones, but replaced them with a long, vague apology. "I'm sorry for caring too much. I'm sorry that being patient with someone in pain made me look like the bad guy. I hope someday people understand that love can be misunderstood when someone isn't ready to receive it." I read it twice. Then I put the phone face down on Mia's coffee table. I said, "He's making himself the victim." Mia said, "Yes." I said, "They're going to believe him." She sat beside me. "Some will." That answer hurt because it was honest. More messages came after that. A family friend named Grace wrote, "I saw Ryan's post. I hope you didn't lead him on while grieving. Men can get confused too." I almost threw my phone. I had barely spoken to him beyond basic politeness. I had avoided him in the house I was supposed to be healing in. I had locked my bedroom door. I had told my mother I was uncomfortable. And somehow people were already finding a way to make me responsible for his feelings. That was when I decided to post. I did not do it right away. I waited 2 days because I did not want to act out of pure rage. I wrote it in my notes app first. I deleted anything that sounded like an insult. I removed Ryan's name. I removed my mother's name. I kept it short. Then I posted it. I wrote that since vague public posts were being made about me, I wanted to be clear. I left my mother's home because someone in that house repeatedly crossed boundaries during the most vulnerable period of my life, made disrespectful comments about my late husband, and made me feel unsafe in my own grief. I said I would not be discussing it further, and I asked people not to contact me about reconciliation. That was all. No names. No screenshots. No dramatic details. But people figured it out immediately. Ryan took his account down within an hour. My mother called me 16 times. I did not answer. Then Paul texted me. All he wrote at first was, "I'm sorry." I stared at those words until my eyes burned. A minute later, another message came in. I should have stepped in sooner. That one hurt more. Because yes, he should have. He was not cruel like my mother. He did not encourage Ryan. He did not romanticize it. But he had lived in that house too. He had seen Ryan hovering. He had heard enough. He had chosen silence until the kitchen became impossible to ignore. A few days later, Paul asked if he could send me money for a deposit on a small place. My pride wanted to say no. My bank account said yes. So I accepted it. Not because I forgave him. Not because money fixed anything. But because I needed a door that locked and belonged to me. I found a tiny studio in Portland with bad water pressure and one window that sticks when it rains. The walls are thin. The kitchen is barely a kitchen. The closet is too small, and the floor creaks near the bed. But it is mine. The first night I slept there, I put Luke's hoodie on the back of a chair and his mug in the cabinet. I sat on the floor because I did not own a couch yet, eating noodles from a paper bowl, and for the first time in months, I cried without feeling watched. That sounds small, but it felt like freedom. My mother still texts once a week. Sometimes she says Ryan is in therapy. Sometimes she says he understands better now. Sometimes she says, "I hope you don't let one mistake destroy this family." I answer maybe once a month. Usually something short. "I need space. I'm not ready. Please stop bringing him up." She does not like that. She wants a big emotional conversation where I cry, she cries, and somehow everything becomes blurry enough that nobody has to be fully responsible. But I am not giving her that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Ryan has not contacted me directly since I left. I heard from Mia that he moved out of the basement and is staying with a friend in Salem. I hope he really is getting help. I mean that. I do not want revenge. I do not want his life ruined. I do not want him destroyed. I just want him away from me. And I want my husband's memory to stop being treated like a locked door someone else was waiting for me to open. The part that hurts the most is not even Ryan. It is my mother. Ryan was wrong. Ryan crossed lines. Ryan turned my grief into some fantasy where he was the patient man waiting in the background. But my mother saw me drowning and tried to hand me to him instead of letting me breathe. She saw her daughter sleeping in a room with a locked door, wearing her dead husband's hoodie, barely eating, barely holding herself together, and somehow thought romance was what I needed. Not safety. Not space. Not respect. Romance. And I do not know how to forgive that. I am rebuilding now. Slowly. Quietly. Nothing dramatic. I bought a cheap bookshelf last week and built it wrong the first time. I made chicken and rice soup for myself and cried halfway through because it still smelled like Luke. Then I kept stirring. I added too much garlic, just like he would have. I ate it sitting by the window while rain hit the glass. I do not cry every day anymore. When I do, no one tries to turn it into an opening. No one tells me I am choosing a ghost. No one stands over my grief waiting for it to become convenient. Maybe that is healing. Maybe it is just surviving with better boundaries. I do not know. All I know is I left that house with one suitcase, my husband's hoodie, and the last piece of self-respect I had left. Was I wrong for posting publicly after Ryan's vague posts, or did my family lose the right to privacy when they turned my grief into some twisted love story?